Have you ever noticed how your momentum stalls the moment your days begin to orbit another person's mood? How the plan that felt crystal clear at dawn gets bargained away by evening? How the work that feeds you is quietly exchanged for the performances that keep peace? You call it balance, maturity, love. Arthur Schopenhauer would call it something colder. The will to life redirecting your strength from creation to consolation, from ascent to appeasement. He did not argue that affection is poison. He argued that unmanaged attachment, glamorized by sentiment, becomes the oldest detour from greatness. If you want clarity and output that hold under weather, you must learn to see the mechanism without bitterness. How desire hijacks ambition, how projection turns preference into destiny, how social optics domesticate the will, how mornings are stolen by access, and how to build bonds that shelter rather than smother your highest work. Schopenhauer begins beneath romance. Before biography and ideals, he says, runs the blind will to life, a force that wants only continuation. In men, it often commandeers the strongest drives and redeploys them toward reproduction, status, and security. Ambition, the will to form something new, shares a route with this current, but it is not the same. One climbs to make, the other presses to multiply. The confusion between them is where many men lose 10 prime years. When the will whispers through attraction, it feels like revelation. Suddenly, the future narrows to a face, a voice, a promise of relief from restlessness. The intellect provides noble captions. Partnership, destiny, she makes me better. Sometimes that is true. Often it is camouflage. The test Schopenhauer proposes is brutal and simple. Trace the ledger. Did your hours for solitude, craft, and risk increase or decrease after the bond began? Did your standards grow clearer, or did they become negotiable? Did fear of losing access begin to govern decisions that used to answer to truth? The will's ruse is effective because it speaks in a language you want to hear. It recruits your best parts, protection, generosity, devotion, and spends them on logistics that bury the climb. You wake to a calendar packed with reasonable tasks that never add up to the work that names you. You go to bed calling this being a good man, while the project that required your unbribed mornings sits unvisited. No villain is required, only a man who no longer distinguishes between life and form. Schopenhauer is not counseling monastic contempt. He is offering discrimination. The man aimed at greatness must pry apart the currents. When the will to life demands tribute that costs the will to form its oxygen, he must choose, and he must choose before the tribute becomes a habit. The early, quiet no saves the late, loud explosion. It also selects a companion. The person who can love a creator will feel safer near a man who refuses to be conscripted by every surge. The person who prefers management will call that refusal cold. Accept the selection. The first cut, then, is an inward oath. Your mornings belong to form. If a bond cannot respect that, it is not a bond. It is a soft cage. Say this without spectacle. Live it without apology. The will to life will still knock. Let it in on your terms, or let it wait at the door. Your strength returns the moment you stop mistaking urgency for truth. Schopenhauer's second blade is directed at your imagination. He divides experience into will and representation. Representation is the world as painted by your mind, so you can navigate it. Under the heat of desire, that painting becomes a mural. You do not meet a person. You meet a picture that serves the will's agenda. Traits are magnified into virtues. Gaps are romanticized as mystery. Friction is baptized as chemistry. You write a story that justifies the rearrangement of your life, then punish reality when it refuses the script. Projection is dangerous not because it is sinister, but because it is efficient. It turns preference into inevitability. This is the one functions less as discernment and more as a command to your calendar. Reassign resources now. Your intellect cooperates, providing post hoc reasons for sacrifices you never would have made for craft or brotherhood. That is why, after possession, the mural often fades. The body's surge has cooled, the picture loses its light, the real person steps forward. If your life was re-engineered for the picture, disappointment begins. You call it betrayal. Schopenhauer calls it the veil lifting. The antidote is not a suspicious heart. It is procedure that protects you from your own theatre. Let the painting be tested by repetition under cost. Keep your mornings intact and watch whether respect survives. Hold boundaries without tantrum and watch whether warmth remains. Require promises to be kept in weather, not in candlelight. The person meant to walk with you will not feel insulted by this rigor. They will relax because they can read you. The person meant to supervise you will escalate courts because fog was leverage. Projection also feeds on silence. Alone, it multiplies until it feels sacred. Speak your terms early, plainly. Work first. No public litigation. Repairs scheduled, not improvised. Affection generous, but never a veto over law. If these are framed as control, you have learned the economy. Your pliability is the price of intimacy. Decline to pay. Greatness requires you to survive being misunderstood in order to remain legible to the future. Representation isn't the enemy. Untested representation is. The man who learns to separate what he feels from what he can prove keeps his dignity in romance and his momentum in work. He can still adore, but he refuses idolatry. He can still be moved, but he refuses to be moved off his post. Schopenhauer's severity buys you this mercy, the freedom to love a real person after you stop worshipping your own painting. Schopenhauer is a bookkeeper of pain. He asks you to follow the money of your attention. Ambition is an attention economy, repeated deposits under boredom into one vault. Desire, ungoverned, is a spending spree. Small purchases that feel urgent and leave nothing to show. Access is the most expensive purchase of all. To keep it, men rent out their best hours, pawn their discipline, and accept terms they would mock in any other negotiation. They call it romance and wonder why contempt grows on both sides. The arithmetic is plain. A creator's day hinges on a few non-negotiables: sleep that keeps him honest, solitude that keeps him original, training that keeps him able, labor that ships. If access, texts, calls, errands, soothing, crisis attendance regularly interrupts those pillars, the output drops. A week becomes salvageable, a quarter becomes compromised, a year becomes a story about how things got busy. In truth, you made yourself rentable. You rewarded interruptions with your entire life's oxygen. Incentives did the rest. Schopenhauer does not blame the other for knocking. The world will always knock. He blames you for removing the lock and calling it love. The correction is inside your jurisdiction. Price yourself correctly. Make clear, by schedule and action, that the pillars are not for sale. Remind yourself that access offered on these terms will be either the right person's relief or the wrong person's rage. Either way, you remain intact. The person who wants a man will not try to buy a boy. The person who wants a manager will go shopping elsewhere. This pricing is not petulance. It is mercy. It keeps you from becoming the hollow version of yourself who performs warmth while resenting the cost. It keeps your companion from trying to drink from a dry well and blaming you for the dust. It keeps your work from decaying into a museum of almosts. And it keeps your name clean, because the man who protects his terms doesn't need to explode. He rarely needs to explain. He points to the charter and keeps building. You will be accused of rigidity by those who were fed by your softness. Accept the fee. You will be called reliable by people who matter. Accept the responsibility. Greatness is a long obedience in the same direction. Long obedience requires fences. Fences require enforcement. This is not romance's enemy. It is romance's only chance to live alongside something larger than itself without being blamed for every ambition that failed. Schopenhauer distrusted crowds because crowds judge by the eye. In that economy, harmlessness buys favor and enforcement earns suspicion. Ambition, which needs edges and decisions, is domesticated by optics. A man learns to be safe in public, theatrically understanding, relentlessly apologetic, permanently available, and his will bends toward whatever avoids trial. The house praises him. His work withers. Quiet resentment blooms. He teaches everyone, including himself, that his standards are negotiable and his time is common property. Soft courts multiply in such climates. Group chats as tribunals, feeds as witness stands, tone as evidence. The man who enforces a line is framed as harsh. The person who weaponizes hurt is framed as virtuous. If you build your life where optics rule, your ambition will be litigated into neutrality. Schopenhauer's remedy is to change ground and show process. Decide where truth can be checked and decline performance where it cannot. Write agreements, keep logs. Move conflict to rooms that demand verification and reject audiences that pay performance. This is not to live bloodlessly. It is to refuse governance by weather. When tears or charm attempt to reset terms, you say a sentence that honors both reality and person. I believe your pain. The rule stands. When accusation arrives without evidence, you answer once with facts and an invitation to process. Then you return to work. Pattern will defend you better than debate. People who desire outcomes will feel safer. People who desire leverage will feel deprived. Selection is the point. Domestication also happens at home without witnesses. You begin to preemptively edit yourself to prevent scenes. You avoid decisions that could be tried in the court of mood. You slowly transfer authority from your charter to your fear of conflict. The will to form becomes a clerk to reputation management. Schopenhauer would drag this into light. Call it what it is. A man bargaining with his own diminishment to purchase temporary calm. You cannot build that way. You can only decorate decay. Reversal is simple, brutal, and gentle. Reclaim jurisdiction. Speak less, enforce more. Love warmer once the lines are visible. Your house will test you. It is supposed to. If respect replaces management, you have converted optics back into truth. If management escalates to preserve leverage, you have your answer. Greatness is expensive. It cannot be paid in likes, consensus, or applause. It is paid in hours of unmarketed work and in the courage to be briefly called cold while you keep the fire that warms everyone later. Schopenhauer's pessimism, properly digested, becomes selection, not bitterness. If unmanaged attachment can detour your ascent, then choose attachments that guard it. This is not fantasy. It is rare, and it is earned. The companion who shelters greatness will share several traits that survive sentiment. Respect for your first hours, comfort with distance that preserves admiration, preference for process over theater, and affection that does not purchase exceptions to agreed law. A person fit to stand near your life's work will protect your first hours rather than compete with them. They will not require proof of love at dawn. They will collect the fruit of that love at dusk. If access demands the sacrifice of the furnace that heats the house, they are not your companion. They are a rival bidder for your soul. State this once, kindly, and live it. The right person will exhale. The wrong will escalate. Believe the data. Eros requires altitude. Admiration requires difference. Companions who collapse all distance in the name of unity, exhaust desire and breed contempt. Companions who can enjoy closeness without eating your edges keep you interesting and themselves secure. Teach the house rights of distance, protected solitude, male fellowship that corrects you, thresholds where silence rules. Watch who tries to burn those thresholds down and who helps you keep them. The partner for a builder will prefer repair over tribunals. They will take hard talks to scheduled tables, not to audiences. They will separate pain from policy. I am hurt, and the rule stands. That sentence signals adulthood. It also signals that your ambition has a chance to live near love. Without this, every decision will be tried in the theater. Work dies there. If sweetness consistently buys exceptions to law, your house will melt. Tie closeness to repeatable behaviors. Kept times, clean speech under heat, promises honored in rain. Reward those. Refuse trades that sell tomorrow's respect for tonight's comfort. The person who can love a creator will understand this arithmetic. They are not being starved of romance. They are being spared contempt. Selection sounds austere because it is, but it is the only mercy large enough for two lives that will suffer, age, and bury people together. The companion who shelters greatness is not a fantasy. They are simply rare because they must defeat their own will to manage you. Honor them by defeating yours to be managed. Then love can live beside the climb without being blamed for what cowardice would have killed anyway. Schopenhauer's severity is a scalpel, not a cudgel. The point is not to hate, it is to see. Once you see the currents, will versus form, projection versus person, optics versus truth, you are responsible to arrange your life so that your highest work is not bled out by sentimental drift. Then, and only then, can affection be clean. You do not need to be unfeeling. You need to be structured. You do not need to be alone. You need to be unowned. The return to work is the proof. Keep the oaths that make you you. Let your calendar display your theology. First hours for form. Honest labor in daylight. Presence in the evening that is not purchased by self-betrayal. Rest that returns you to scale. Speak less about what you are building. Show more that you have built. Accept that some rooms will call you rigid because you no longer rent yourself by the hour. Accept also that new rooms will open. The ones where outcomes outrank optics and where people breathe easier around a man who is not secretly negotiating every boundary for fear of disapproval. Affection, purified, becomes lighter. You can hold someone while keeping the rule. You can say no without theater and yes without bargaining. You can survive tears without surrendering judgment and celebrate joy without losing your mornings. You can leave bonds that want your compliance more than your presence without slander. You can stay in bonds that honor your climb without apology. This is not a cold life. It is a life where warmth is not a bribe. Greatness, properly understood, is not celebrity. It is the long accumulation of form, work that resists you and is better for it, a name that answers for you when you are not in the room, a face that steadies others because it is not owned by weather. Many will never see the price you paid to protect those conditions. That is fine. The fruit is for the city, not for the algorithm. You made it to the end, which already marks a man tired of calling drift devotion. If this cleared the fog and gave you language to guard your climb without spite toward anyone, break the wall. Write in the comments below that one sentence you will live this week to protect your boundary, to keep your work honest. Like this video and share it to a brother, quietly trading greatness for access. Subscribe if you want philosophy with a blade. And remember, Schopenhauer's charge is austere and freeing. Stop feeding the currents that drown your form. Build the form and let love gather to it.